Greetings, folks, and welcome to another one of our Friday classes right here on the YouTubes. I post these classes every single Friday, so stick around. My name is Josh. I am a traditional herbalist and modern Wortcunning practitioner, and this week I'm very excited to be sharing with you 7 herbs of Wortcunning and spiritual herbalism. So the goal of this week's class is to introduce you or reintroduce you, or maybe deepen your relationship to just 7 herbs that I feel excel at helping us onto and down the path, the plant spirit path, right? These are herbs that act as openers of the ways, as blessers of the journey. And they are really the first herbs that I think about when folks express their budding interest in working with plants in these deeper ways, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit of an overview. Why did I choose 7? There's a method to my madness. How I chose these herbs, not very easy. And then we are going to talk about 7 herbs. Some of these may be familiar to you: Mugwort, Chamomile, Fennel, Plantain, Rosemary, Sage, and Thyme. And we will end with a little bit of an invitation. So we're going to get started here in a moment, but first, a couple of things. This is not exhaustive in any way. These are not the only 7 herbs that act as way showers. They're not the only 7 herbs that I can think of right now. They're probably not the only 7 herbs you can think of, but they're the 7 herbs that I chose for this class. It took me 2 weeks to decide which 7 I wanted to talk about because narrowing these lists down is nearly impossible for me. This is also not a complete survey of any one of the herbs we talk about. We're talking about just some of the virtues of the plant, very specific aspects of their blessings. We're not really getting into the medicinal virtues. We're not really getting into the magical ritual virtues. We're really focusing on how these plants can help us onto the path and bless our journey into doing plant spirit work. They might not be the same that you would pick, and if they're different than the 7 that would be on your list, then I invite you to put your list in the comments below because I want to know which ones you're thinking about, right? Something to consider when considering which of these 7 you might engage with or which 7 might end up on your list are which plants are bioregional to you, especially are any of them invasive. So you can go out and pick them and cultivate them and hang out with them in person. Which ones are accessible? Do you have a small garden, maybe a pot on a porch or a windowsill? Can some of these herbs be grown in an accessible way for you? Can some of them be purchased from local herb shops or local farmers so that they are not being carted across the world and across the oceans for you to have a cup of tea? Cultural and traditional connections are important. Maybe you are part of a particular culture or a particular spiritual tradition for which some of these plants have a connection, right? That's always nice. We can do a little Venn diagram and say, this plant is relevant to where I live, the tradition that I practice, and the culture I come from, and that's a good plant to work with. You might have personal connections to some of these plants or personal aversions to some of these plants, both of those being invitations for us to go deeper into a connection with them. And some of them might be more relevant to what you do, how you do it, right? You might practice in a particular way or approach this work in a particular way that speaks to some of the things we'll talk about more than others. So consider these things always whenever you hear anybody talk about anything herbal, right? This is always important, is what is relevant to you. So here's how I chose these 7. These are all plants that, as I mentioned, open the ways. They show us the way onto the plant spirit path. These are way shower herbs that, for starters, can be the ones that remind us about animism, that we are living in a world full of persons, that not all of those persons are human, but all of them are capable of kinship and sacred reciprocity. And with the 4 herbs that we talk about that are referenced in Charm, you'll really get to see what this way shower energy looks like in practice. These are gatekeeper herbs. They have the ability to open up gates leading from the world of the human perspective to the world of the plant spirit perspective, that collective of the green realm. And by opening that gates, they give us access, right, to the mysteries of the plants. These are fire starter allies. They help get us excited about the work. They encourage us to do the work. They get us off our butts and out of our heads sometimes, right? And into our hearts and our hands. They are onion peelers. They will take us one layer at a time with love and trust, deeper and deeper into ourselves as people, just as we go deeper and deeper into the work or further and further down the path. The plants will always encourage us to be more ourselves and more operating from a place of harmony and beauty. And these 7 that I chose are exemplary at making that happen. These plant spirits are also clean mirrors. They will reflect to you what you need to see, what you need to know, what you need to work on. And in that way, they are very much bullshit callers, right? Not in a mean way, but they will always find these really creative synchronicities to bring into your awareness that say, hey, in order for you to take the next step that you want to take, you're going to have to work on something. You're going to have to work on this, soften this, heal this, get over this. The bullshit callers, right? So all of these plants needed to be everything on this list in order to make it into this class today. I chose 7 because of the Neon Wirta Galder, the 9 herbs charm of the 10th century collection. We call it Laknunga. There is a mention of the 7 realms in that particular charm. We don't necessarily know what those 7 realms are, but I take that number 7 to represent everything, all possibilities, the entire cosmos, every realm that exists. So my hope is that by choosing 7 herbs, we have covered every base, and there will be at least one that every single one of you will connect with. These herbs all come from the old English herbals that have nourished my work. I am a traditionally trained clinical herbalist, but I work almost exclusively with plants that are well attested in the old English herbals of my herbwise ancestors and those that come with all of the charm and ritual therein. And so these herbs are no different. A lot of these plants are common. They're accessible, they're approachable, they're plants that you'll recognize when you see them, or the name is familiar, or you can get them at your local herb shop or find them in the tea aisle. This is important, right? If we learn about the plants and never connect to them, this is armchair herbalism and it doesn't get us anywhere. There's also a look at how we think about and talk about plants. So if this work, this Wortcunning, plant spirit, spiritual herbalism type stuff is new to you, we will use these 7 herbs as a way to talk about how we think about herbs, how we think about the plants, how we approach them and engage with them. You'll see it and you'll hear it in the language that I use. If this is not new to you, let this be a reminder, right? While some of this material may seem basic or foundational, it's a reminder to the old schoolers that the basics are the basics for a reason. They are the foundation upon which all of us do whatever cool stuff it is that we do. So it is always worthy coming back to our beginnings, back to our roots. Look, our first plant pun. Let's get started. I'm going to begin with Mugwort, also Mucwyrt, or Una. Here is the first verse of the Neon Wirta Galder, the 9 herbs charm. Remember, Mugwort, what you brought to pass, what you readied at Regenmeld. You're called Una, that most ancient plant. You defeat 3, you defeat 30, you defeat venom, and you defeat air illness. You defeat the horror who stalks the land. So you will see this in other verses. I'm not going to repeat it after this, but look at how we're talking about and to the plant. If you didn't know this verse was written about a plant, you might think it was written about a deity, a hero, an ancestor, or some other human person, because it is written honoring and acknowledging the personhood of the plant, right? This is very, very important. Without this person-to-person kinship, without the possibility of spirit-to-spirit sacred reciprocity, this work falls apart, right? There's no way for the magic to happen in the way that we want it to happen if we are approaching the plants as tools, resources, or commodities, or something that's here just to serve, the human whim and the human narrative. Rather, we approach them as arcane spirits, fully conscious and wise, capable of relationship and communication, and you will see that reflected time and time again in our discussion today. So let's unpack this a little bit. First, with mugwort, we see a kenning used in this particular verse of ildest huerta, oldest herb. Okay, so mugwort for me is the primary opener of ways, the first among herbs, the herb that taught all other herbs how to herb. Okay, the teacher, the initiator. And so when we approach mugwort with this sentiment, we are saying, mugwort, you are the teacher of all plants. Please teach me all plants. Yes, this is very powerful. When folks first show their interest in plant spirit path work, this is often the plant that I encourage them to sit with first. Not necessarily ingesting, right? Because mugwort is a very strong herb, but sit with, listen to. There's so much folklore about mugwort being worked with by weary travelers, right? Folks who have to walk from one village to another, maybe in the modern day, spending entire day in Ubers and airplanes. And there's this beautiful charm and ritual where before sunrise, the day of travel, the traveler goes out and they collect some mugwort with their left hand and tuck that bit of mugwort into each shoe. And that protects them from weariness and fatigue on their journey while also protecting them from bad things happening. Mugwort is one of the more stimulating allies in the Western materia medica. And so it makes sense that we would bring mugwort in to give us energy and to keep us inspired. This travel has a literal meaning, of course, right? Like I said, walking from one village to another, traveling, on an airplane or in a car, preventing weariness and fatigue. But we really should ask ourselves, what kind of travel are we talking about? And where does this potential for travel support stop? Those folks who are working the plant spirit path are travelers, right? We are walking down a path. We are walking down a tradition, and we even say that we journey with the plant spirits. So mugwort is a fantastic ally to help keep us alert and connected as we, as travelers, embark on the plant spirit path. There's also so much in the folklore about mugwort being worked with for protection of home and of traveler, right? So first, we have protection from malefic spirits. That's always nice. When we feel protected, we can be more vulnerable. We can let go into the work a little bit more. We can get a little more squishy. We can allow ourselves to step into altered states of consciousness more confidently. Yeah. But what I really love about this particular lore is mugwort being seen as a protector from malefic leechdoms. Okay. And leechdoms is what we're talking about, right? Herbal medicine, herbal healing, herbal work. So maybe in ye old times, people said mugwort hung above the doorway or in the horse barn or whatever will protect us from, maybe witches who are using malefic plant magic. They're working with poison plants or whatever to curse us and steal our cow's milk, whatever the situation may be. But what does that look like now in the modern era, right? Protection from malefic leechdoms to me means protection from ourselves, protecting us from ever using plants or green wisdom or the blessings of our herbwise ancestors in any malefic way, protecting us from using this wisdom in greedy or destructive or ugly ways, right? It's saying protect us from bad leechdom and keep us connected to good leechdom. That's how I see it, right? And so when we're first starting out on the path, we need that protection. We need a plant spirit who will be there to say, hey, don't go down the wrong path. Don't be a dick. Don't use this power that you will connect to in ways that are not for the good of all. Yeah, this is very important. Mugwort is a very bitter, descending, condensing plant ally. So there's also a grounding and centering aspect of mugwort. This is one that I really love to give to people who are in their heads. They kind of float, they overthink things, they're engaging with too many things. They haven't really found the one thing they want to do. They're grasping. Mugwort will bring us into body, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that more bitterness with our next plant, chamomile. So Here we have chamomile. Yeah. Mægđa. Mægđa is the Old English name. You, Mægđa, remember what you revealed, what you accomplished at Allerford, that never should one lose one's life to disease, since for him Mægðan was prepared for food. Okay, so this is another verse from the Nine Herbs charm. Here we see the plant being addressed as a person, their virtues being extolled in a very humble and loving way. And we see that the charm is talking about Mægđa being prepared as food to protect one from disease. Okay, so how does that play into our work on the plant spirit path and Wortcunning? First, we see chamomile as a strewing and stepping herb. Strewing means that an herb is thrown all over the floor and then swept up. Okay, why? When we do that with the proper prayers and the proper attitudes, the herb will soak up negativity, soak up malefic patterns, chase away malefic spirits. We do a lot of strewing work after somebody's been sick, or there's been something bad happen in a space, or after someone has passed away, right? To purify and set right the space. We also see chamomile grown as a stepping herb on the way to ancient Roman and Greek temples, so that as the devotee walked up to the temple, they stepped on the herb and it released the fragrance, fragrancing them and fragrancing the air, right? This is very beautiful. So chamomile, time and time again, is an herb of blessing the path, right? Bringing blessing, very, very sunshiny, bright, warm, comforting energy on our path. Again, we're on a journey here, yeah? Healer of the gardening gardener. Much of the folklore around chamomile says that when you grow chamomile in a garden, chamomile acts as the physician to all the other plants in the garden. They heal those plant spirits and they provide protection to them. And this, of course, spills over to the steward of the garden, the gardener. So chamomile acts as a healer and a guardian for those of us who are engaging with plants directly, right? If you're a gardener or you keep some plants this way, chamomile, very, very important for that. Chamomile is a mineral-dense nervous system ally. You may have heard of chamomile, tea, for example, being sipped on to calm the nerves. The bitterness and the mineral density of this particular flower creates a centering and a calming in the body, not unlike the bitterness of mugwort, but much more palatable and much more enjoyable, and also much more safe for most people. This bitterness causes the digestive system to crank on. And when the digestive system is on, we are in rest and digest, which means we cannot be fully invested in fight or flight. So this calming, centering thing is very, very important. It's hard for us to learn new things, for us to engage in sacred reciprocity when we're in meltdown mode, right? So let chamomile, Mægđa, help us calm. Time and time again in the lore, chamomile is extolled as the herb that is good for what ails ye, right? Whatever it is, whatever the problem is, chamomile is a good place to start as long as this herb is safe for you to work with. I have said it before in other classes. I'll say it again right now. If I could only pick one herb for some reason to have for the rest of my life, it would be this one. Fennel. Finule, right? It's one you might not expect it, and Fennel has a verse in the Nine Herbs charm. Filla and Finule, a very mighty two. These warts the wise Lord shaped, holy in the heavens, while he hung, set and sent them to 7 worlds, poor and prosperous, as remedy for all. Let me mention, by the way, wort is an Old English word that means herb. And the wise Lord being referenced in this charm is none other than Woden, right? So here Finule is being sent by Woden to the 7 worlds, to every part of the universe, to every realm that exists. And for both the poor and the prosperous, Fennel is a remedy, right? This is a plant for everyone. Embodiment through aromatics. Have you ever smelled Fennel seeds, then you know. If you have fennel seeds in a jar, you open up that jar in the kitchen, suddenly the whole kitchen smells like fennel, right? These aromatic herbs permeate space. They encourage us to step fully into self. And fennel teaches us how the herbs can guide us not so much down a path that's external, but down a path that leads to the inner realms, into the deeper parts of ourselves, into embodying the fullness of ourselves, into embodying all 9 aspects of self, right? So fennel helps us settle into self. You may have seen fennel worked with as a digestive aid, right? This is about settling, the energy moving top to down, right? Moving into center and into core. Fennel is a very airy plant, which has them relate to the nervous system, taking the buzz out of the nervous system, helping us feel safe and comfortable to settle fully into being. And we have to bring back up that verse from the Mucwyrt Galder, success for poor and prosperous, right? The herbs are not impressed by your bank account. They're not impressed by the label on your clothes. They're not impressed by showy acts of piety with no depth. They are for everyone and everyone equally. And fennel really reminds us that the herbs have been distributed across the 7 world to bring success to the poor and to the prosperous, to those people who are struggling and those people who seem like they're already succeeding, right? This is a deeper kind of success. It's a success of self, of really attuning to the reality of person. Very, very powerful, a little more subtle than some of the other herbs we're going to talk about. But if fennel's right for you, you get the tug and you say, I'm going to sit with fennel. Plantain, Plantago major, Plantago lanceolata, depending on maybe where you are, northern United States anyway. Wegbrade. Here's another verse from the 9 Herbs Charm. And you, Wegbrade, mother of warts, open to the east, within, mighty, over you carts creaked, over you women rode, over you brides yelled, over you oxen snorted. All you withstood and pushed back against, so might you withstand venom and onflyers, and the loathsome one that fares across the land. Plantain's a badass, okay? If you've ever encountered this herb, we'll talk about this a little more in the next slide. Plantain, when plantain shows up, plantain's here to stay, okay? So here in the verse, we see plantain being extolled as the mother of warts, the mother of herbs, in the same kind of vein that mugwort is Una, the first of herbs. Plantain is the mother of herbs, the nourisher, the protector, right? And we see time and time again in this particular verse that plantain is stepped on, rode over, parked on, yelled at, oxen plowing through. No problem. I withstand, right? I bounce back. So there is this resiliency. And if you ever have the opportunity to be around, especially Plantago major, like is shown in the photo here, these big ribs in the plants have these fibrous filaments in them that are just so strong you can floss your teeth with them, right? Very, very strong, powerful plant. Wegbrade. So first and foremost, mineral dense, all these weedy herbs that grow close to the ground, root deeply, won't go away when you want them to go away. Think about dandelion, alfalfa, nettles, red clover, plantain, right? These are nourishing, deeply nutrient dense plants for humans and others. Because of this closeness to the ground, this deep rooting, this mineral density, they are grounding herbs, and they help us to hold our ground, just as plantain stays put when being yelled over, rolled over, stepped on, trampled on. Plantain shows us how to hold our ground, right? This is very important. Herbalism in all its forms, even the most allopathic clinical stuff that I don't like, including the more spiritual, clinical, traditional stuff I do like, is a radical act of resistance in the world right now. Choosing to trust nature, to trust the wisdom of your body, to trust the weather and the sun and the moon and the soil is going against the grain these days, right? So Plantain says, hold your ground. There is nourishment to be gathered by standing where you are, by growing where you're planted, and by sticking to what you believe in, right? So there's also a deep aspect of land connection with Plantain. And this is really interesting because I am currently speaking to you from America, a place where Plantain is not native, right? In fact, one of the early American names, epithets of Plantain was white man's footprint or Englishman's footprint, because everywhere the English folk showed up, Plantain was there too, because they brought Plantain with them. Yeah. So there's this aspect of Plantain being very invasive, very weedy, and even representing some of the darker aspects of people moving around from one place to another, colonization and the like. But this plant through and through will teach us how to engage with where we are. Land connection. Plantain teaches us how to show up, grow where we're planted, acknowledge the sacredness of the land we're on. And this is very important in the plant spirit path. If we live in the herb books, if we fetishize and exoticize the herbs that we read about in the herbals that don't grow where we are, and we never make friends with the plants that are growing outside of our doorstep, we're missing the first step of communication from plants, right? Plants that want to be in relationship with us will grow around us. This is just very simple. It's so simple, it seems ridiculous, right? The plants that show up where you live are the plants that you should be in relationship with. It doesn't mean you need to be best friends with all of them, but you should know them. And Plantain gives us access to that. Plantain says, let me teach you how to confidently identify, confidently understand the plants that share space with you. This is very, very important. Rosemary, Boþen, right? Maybe Boþen. We're not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. This could be a different plant entirely in the folklore, but probably Boþen. Rosemary for remembrance. Okay, we think about rosemary as a cerebrostimulant, as opening up the peripheral nervous system, as being included in so much folklore about remembrance, being burned on the funeral pile, so the dead are remembered, being made into wreaths at a funeral, so we tell our mighty dead, we won't forget you. But this remembrance of rosemary goes so much deeper. Okay, one of the old folk names, Rosmarinus, right? Dew of the sea. And this always trips people up. It used to trip me up too. Why is this Mediterranean, sandy soil loving, aromatic, minty herb of remembrance also have this weird connection to the sea? And then we did some journey work with rosemary many years ago. And the first thing Rosemary said is, because the thing I will help you remember is when we all came from the ocean, when we all came out of the sea, the plants and the humans alike, all of us crawled out of that vast womb of amniotic fluid. And so rosemary is an ally of remembering the herb-wise ancestors, of connecting to the people in your bloodline, your culture line, your tradition line, your land line, who worked with plants in the way that you would like to work with plants, who knew things about the green realm that you would like to know about the green realm. Rosemary is profound connector. Without our ancestral connections in Wortcunning and spiritual herbalism, we are practicing with our eyes closed, right? It's just not smart. Why reinvent the wheel, right? It's unnecessary. Rosemary, as a member of the Lamiaceae family plant, the mint family plant, this one and the next two we're talking about, all mint family plants, is a chatty plant. All the mint family plants, all members of the Lamiaceae family are chatty, right? They are the herbs that speak the loudest, are the easiest for us to understand, are the easiest for us to connect to, because they have been wrapped up in the human narrative since forever. They're invested in our success as humans. They are saints to the human experience. So rosemary, very, very chatty. Protection against thirst, malicious spiritual beings and patterns. Who doesn't want a little bit of that, right? So if you feel like you need that extra protection against the thirst, you can work with rosemary, smolder a little, carry a little. One of the old Stockholm herbals basically says the person carrying a sprig of thyme or sprig of rosemary, cannot become the victim of any of the thyrses. Pretty awesome. So here we have protection and remembrance, deep herb-wise ancestral work through one plant. Easy peasy. Here's another mint family plant, sage, Saluie, right? In the Old English, Saluie, we get from the Latin salvia, savior. He that would live for A must eat sage in May, right? Sage is the protector of life, the preserver of vital essence, the all healer, the great savior. Even in the name, we see sage being extolled as the wise one and the savior, the all healer in Salvia. Sage will awaken the senses, open up the physical senses, but also the subtle, intuitive senses, and then connect them. Very, very important in this work, because when we connect with plants, we can connect with them on the physical. We can look at them, smell them, taste them, touch them, but we also want to engage with them on the heart level senses, right? That go beyond the physical. And so when there's a disconnect, or when there's some sleepiness or fogginess in those senses, sage is the one that will help us fix that. Sage will also teach us how to connect to plant languages, how to learn from plants, how to learn how to hear plants. And I don't mean hear literally, wherever that wisdom drops in, right? It comes through the heart first, and then it goes where it goes. And I wanted to put this in here because I think it's cute. A lot of the charms and folklore around Salvie in the Old English herbals talk about this being a fantastic herb against that which causes itching. And I think about sage as being a protection or an ally against those folks who are frustrated. They're irritated. They're running hot, right? It's like everything is stewing inside and they can't relax enough to let stuff go. These are impediments on the path. And people who are called to sage are itchy people. Maybe not literally. They're people who need to release the exterior through the diaphoretic action of sage and let shit go. Let stuff breeze through them, right? Oftentimes when we see itching, it has to do with the exterior of the body being tense and tight, right? And energy being congested and internal heat being congested. So Salvie against that which causes itching. The last herb we're going to talk about is thyme, Organe. Thyme is fiery hot. This is one of our spiciest, warmest in the Western materia medica. I think about thyme as a bringer of the need fire, the sacred fire, the ritual fire that heats and warms, transforms, and brings light. This is very much thyme. But the important reason why we would bring thyme into our first forays into plant spirit work, or our journey deeper into the ways of ancestral wortcunning, is to deepen and connect the breath. Thyme drops the breath into the whole body, and breath is the anatomical expression of sacred reciprocity of give and receive. Give and receive effortlessly, right? This is ghosty. Do ut des. I give that you may give. So when we're first understanding sacred reciprocity of how to give freely of the plants and of the plants to others, and how to receive deeply of the plants, thyme will teach us how to do that. And oftentimes thyme teaches us how to do that through the medium of the breath. So we want to purify the lungs of the upper and lower respiratory system, open up the airways, make sure things are warm, movable, thinned, so that our breath can be a good vehicle for give and receive. And the fiery energy of thyme, here's where we'll end things, is real get shit done energy. Okay, so if you're one of those people who you've been reading about it, you've been thinking about it, you've been watching all the YouTube videos, you've watched 10 YouTube videos on how to make a tincture, you still have never made a tincture, you've watched read books on how to go out and confidently identify different species of oak, still never gone out and hugged an oak tree. Thyme is for you. Thyme will get you out of the armchair and into the dirt, right? This is closed book, open heart, right? So with that, thank you so much. It's so much fun to get to take a little foray and talk about herbs. Usually we're talking about so much philosophy and practice and ways of thinking about things. We don't always get to dig into just like talking about the plants, right? So hopefully that was inspiring for you. You got some stuff. Here are 3 ways you can stay connected with me and support my work. The first thing is go get my newsletter. I'm not really doing social media anymore other than right here on YouTube. So go to my website. There's a sign up at the top. You can just go to thegreenart.com/newsletter. Get my newsletter. I send it out once a month, and there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. You can join us on Patreon, anywhere from free to $18 per month, where you will get access to all the content that I make, classes, courses, guided plant spirit journeys, all the good stuff. And of course, I have 2 books. Both were published by Aeon Books in London, but you can get them worldwide. Here's the thing. If your library doesn't have these books or other books you love, ask if they can buy a copy. And if you have a cool bookstore near you, even if it's not like a cool bookstore, go in and say, hey, here's 3 or 4 books that I was about to order on Amazon. Could you order them in for me? You're going to pay the same price and you're going to support a local bookshop, which is so cool. Bookshops are fantastic. All right. Thank you guys so much. Blessings of peace and plenty. See you next time.